when I figured out that the point of some meditation is concentration rather than zoning out, really opened up the possibilities for me in a lot of ways, and I really enjoy concentrating on my breath, as we've talked about ad nauseum, right? Tonight I did a pretty traditional one for me, which is focusing on just double the out than the in, and I find that as I've trained this pattern for myself, when I come into a resting period, that I immediately flip onto this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. It's very calm and restful, rather than my mind spinning on some thought or plan or event. It goes to a very boring thing, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. I prefer it. And I find that if I focus on my breath in that manner, I can really reset myself in moments of my existence. And if I start expanding it, so I immediately go to a 4-8, which when I first began this practice, I was not able to do. So I would be inhaling for a 4, out for an 8. When I first began this practice, when I'd be worked up in my day-to-day, I could not hold for 8 seconds out. Not 8 like Om 1, Om 2, Om 3, Om 4, Om 5, Om 6, Om 7, Om 8. My nervous system was just too worked up. And so the rule that I gave myself, because these are all thought experiments and games in our own mind, is that my in-breath had to match the out. So if I was only capable of doing 4 out, Om 1, Om 2, Om 3, Om 4, I was only allowed to do 2 in, even though I wanted to maybe do big. It's natural for the body to have a vacuum process. And I began training myself in this way. Now I can expand out to 32s, beyond on the out, and it's my experience that that simple little practice through cultivation over a period of months has led to a very wonderful experience for myself of very deep meditative states when held. It's the little practices pushed out over months that become really powerful. And that's what we're talking about tonight in more words, I guess, than that. Hey, Mr. William, do you know where my cell phone is by any chance? Unless you covered it up with your thing. It is on the harmonium. Wonderful. Yay! Affirmation and denial, cultivating the garden of your mind. If you have been with us, we are working our way through Jungian shadow work. We began with William giving us a wonderful introduction to what this concept is, what it looks like in our life, and he carried it to a wonderful Sunday talk I hope you were at. If you don't come on Sundays, it was even a further explanation of his talk on Wednesday and was quite enlivening. We then, last week, if you were here, talked about the topic of noting and using it as a tool for those shadows we are encountering in our work. We have shadows. What are the shadows and how do we identify the shadows? How do we train ourselves to stay around long enough to be able to identify what the shadows are and do the appropriate work for them? I brought forward noting as one concept and topic. There are many. Jung explicitly refers to 3 different methodologies: visualization, journaling, and gentle inquiry. Noting in my mindfulness talk last week was a more in-depth look of gentle inquiry. This week we're talking about unity, which is what we are. And unity has its own process in dealing with shadow and what we encounter inside of our own mental space. Unity is not a church that is traditional. It is a new thought movement that has pushed forward into a congregation. This new thought movement, founded in the 1800s by the Fillmores, had some other players involved, Quimby and Caddy and other people, truly, in my belief, began about 7,000 years ago with the Buddha, got carried forward into Socrates and Plato. Mind comes before form. Got carried forward in the transcendentalists, which then got extricated or pushed out. It's a good word. Into New Thought after the healing of Myrtle Fillmore. Primarily, I mean, there was other healings involved, but the mind coming before form turns out is a very powerful thing inside of your own existence if you cultivate it and train it in the right way. And it was being used for beautiful healing movements in the 1800s, where people were really finding relief from different pains. And multiple large spiritual paths were founded from this. We are talking about unity. H. Emily Caddy. I'm start covering my stuff up over here. Let me see. Got some books. Wonderful woman. Incredible, incredible things. Lessons in Truth. Really, really good read. How I Use Truth. And God, a Present Help. So she was the framework for this Western concept of denial and affirmation that Fillmore grabbed onto. She came a little earlier. And she explains our ability. Let me go down here so I can see where my notes are. Now I have to read up there. As releasing the power of appearances and actually aligning with a spiritual truth that is already present. Here's why this becomes important. In order for this to be relevant, we need to come to terms with the fact that we are a walking sliver of divinity. We need to claim our own divine inheritance, and we need to practice a pathway to cultivate that divine inheritance. Caddy was talking about some pretty crazy ideas in those days. Wonderful woman leading the way. Next, we have Charles Fillmore. I really enjoy Charles Fillmore. If you have not read Charles Fillmore, he is an expansive writer. He really dives into subjects with great depth and veracity and speaks in a very, I enjoy, fun and formal way and talks about exactly what Caddy was discussing and the transcendentalists were talking about and the Hindus were talking about, which is we are a sliver of divinity, and the Fillmores call it an inborn Christ self. And if you go back to the New Testament and read it with a lens, as per these teachings, it is our belief that Jesus was talking about the inborn Christ self. Jesus the way shower. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Buddha. Thank you, Gandhi. Thank you for all these amazing, amazing people. Fillmore started systemizing a practice for this. He was a very business-minded individual and started actually creating a framework for going through the affirmation process. So it's denials, clearing the mental field, remove what is unlike truth. Affirmation, aligning through the divine mind with spiritual law. This is, if you've been on a talk to me before, we get into discussing the difference between the heart mind and the body mind, or intuition and intellect. These are concepts. This is the divine mind versus the standard mind of man. And being able to cultivate and align with that divine mind allows us to use that mind in affirmation and denial to what they say is, and I say, a very good healing effect in our own existence. So it continues through to be negating the false and affirming. Next, we have Myrtle Fillmore. So this is the embodied approach. If you don't know who Myrtle Fillmore is and you're sitting inside of a unity congregation, you should read one of her books. She has multiple of them, which I really enjoy. Healing Letters, absolutely wonderful short read. And How to Let God Help You. Myrtle Fillmore had a chronic, life-threatening disease. Tuberculosis, was it? Yes. And healed herself through the power of thought. And then began teaching people how to do it. She wasn't making a system, though. Charles made the system. Myrtle was experiencing it. Myrtle was feeling it. Myrtle was a beautiful person and soul. And so, once again, If you are resonating with anything I'm talking about as we go along in this, look into Myrtle Fillmore. She's an absolutely wonderful person and really the reason why we're all sitting here. So the chemical shift in consciousness, and if you want to zoom out and get away from the theology of the concept because you don't want to talk about being divine or God or anything else, going through and using affirmations and denials in a psychotherapy model will allow you to release different chemicals inside of your system that allow for somatic release, experience, and healing. We can produce oxytocin rather than cortisol. We can use our mind to produce an internal environment which reflects physically. It's proven. And we can practice it. It just takes practice. So going first into this, we need to understand what denial is, right? It can get really tricky with what we're talking about. It removes the power we're assigned to. So it's not suppressing or pretending that a thing doesn't exist. Denial is not saying my leg didn't get cut off. Denial is saying that doesn't make me not whole, I swear. Do you understand the difference? Denial is not saying I don't have cancer. It changes my relationship to it. And there's healing there. If you change your relationship to the event, there's healing there. And there's healing beyond. There are circumstances where there are physical healings which occur. I'm saying there's multiple levels, and we can definitely accomplish a mental healing on a consistent basis using denial and affirmation as a consistent process. It creates inner space so spiritual truth can come forward. We live in fear in moments. We allow these thought processes, these little synapses in our brain to create stories, which we then model our life after, model our behavior after, model our internal dialogue after. We can deny the story and affirm the moment. It's the first step to mentally clearing before an affirmation. Denial is what comes after the mindfulness. So William starts, and there's shadows around here. Oh God, there's shadows. Okay. How do we identify the shadows? We get a flashlight, mindfulness, some tool or another, visualization, journaling. Gain the flashlight, shine it on the shadow. Once we identify the shadow, we deny the shadow. I see that. I see the shadow, and I am not that shadow. I am not anger. I'm maybe in this moment, but it's a passing thing, right? We use it to our advantage as a step in the process. This fear has no ultimate power over my life. This condition cannot separate me from my wholeness. This belief does not define who I am, and this anger cannot override my clarity. I'm not pushing the frickin' button today. I'm not pushing it. This limitation has no authority in my consciousness. This sadness is valid but does not own my destiny. This doubt does not block my connection to the divine. These are just examples. When we identify the shadow, we maybe have some of these in our pocket. I left sheets out in the front if you'd like to take some with some examples on them. But we begin creating an internal environment where we are using our thought processes actively. That's called consciousness. We are using our consciousness to have a metaphysical result, to gain clarity in our existence. And then we follow it up with an affirmation. I'm guided by the wisdom within. Peace fills my mind and heart. Love expresses through me now. Say them. It feels freaking wonderful. I can feel it in my chest as I go through. What I love so much about these processes is they're not hard. They're just hard to remember. Really. More affirmations. I am here. I am present. I am grounded. Divine life is my life, and wholeness is my nature, and well-being is my natural state. I am a loving father. I am capable. I will be okay. I have been here before. I am not going to react to my anger. Bring it into daily life. It's where it matters. We see the shadows. We gain the mindfulness from the practice and the meditation and the prayer. We've been doing our stuff. And now we see them. Do we remember to do it? Do we take a moment to deny and affirm? I have one I love. I currently live like 2 blocks away from where me and my ex, who's the mother of my daughter, were together for like the beginning part of our relationship. Like I drive past the house like every day. We fought there. We were younger. We fought there. We yelled there. There was 3 a.m. yelling there. You know, it was a thing. And I drive past that house every day. And when I drive past that house, those thoughts come up. And I say, I deny that that is my existence right now. I deny that those events dictate who I am. I deny that I'm allowing those to dictate my actions, my feelings, or my thoughts in this existence. And I affirm that I'm a sovereign being. I affirm that I have grown. I affirm health. I affirm good relationship with that person. I affirm love for that person. I affirm that I am okay. I do that in my car by myself. How is your life different if you do that every moment something crappy comes up? There stops being so much crappy stuff. It's not hard to do, it's just hard to remember. But if we have little reminders as you go around, you can begin cultivating an existence. We can begin cultivating an existence that you are actively removing the negative parts of. It's a beautiful, beautiful, powerful process. But it starts with being concentrated enough to be noting that there's something coming up. Why am I feeling like icky while the house. It's the freaking house. Oh, and then I remember this, and then I remember this. And there's these little train thoughts in the background that go on. And what I realized as I went through my process of really opening up with these affirmations was, as I have discussed previously in other talks, there are a lot of automatic systems hiding. And this is a way to begin unwinding them, lovingly, so lovingly. This isn't a hard process. This is you being so kind to yourself, so sweet to yourself in every way that you can. Because self-love is where this begins. Like, we take care of ourselves. And this is very loving. If we begin working with that prayer process, the affirmation process, we can then carry that into affirmative prayer, which is using those same affirmations on a more pointed and poignant basis in order to gain greater healing in our own existence, whether it be internal, external, or in our relations, and greater healing in our community if you're willing to work with others. A note before we end and go to a Q&A, and I hope some people have questions. This is a really fun topic to talk about. But Unity defines this as chemicalization. It's an interesting term. It's from the late 1800s. I've had actual teachers in classes kind of skip the term because it's just so awkward of a term, really. But what they're discussing is that when there's a thing that can occur, which is when we focus on something, it grows. If you've been following along with me, this would relate last week to me discussing that we need to make certain that we are noting pleasant as well as unpleasant experiences. As if we are going about noting our experience, it can become a habit to note only the unpleasant experience and not note the pleasant experience because we want the unpleasant one to go away. It is a similar process which occurs with affirmations and denials. It doesn't always happen, but it can happen, and it is important to note as members of our congregation that if you are doing this work in young shadow work or with affirmations and denials, if you begin focusing on something, it can begin getting stronger. It does not mean you're not doing the good work. It's most likely working, which is why it's getting stronger. And you have to keep your head down and the faith and join community and love and keep going and know that on the hard side of that is the freedom you've been searching for. So it's worth talking about because this isn't sunshine and rainbows. The path to enlightenment is not paved in fields of flowers. But there are many of them. There's a lot. There's a lot. Weed, water, grow. This is my little concept I came up with. It's not really anything special. We're all repeating something that's been used before. Our internal experience is a garden. It can be tended and trained like a garden. It can be trained and tended like a garden. Denials are weeding our garden. Affirmations are watering our garden. We choose what grows. If we use our mindfulness and note things appearing, we rip the weeds. And when we have good experiences, we cultivate that. I want to be more loving, more compassionate, a better father, more service. Water that. Spend the energy there. Affirm what we love that makes us happy and joyful. It just takes daily tending. Any gardener will tell you, and if you've gardened, you know it, the weeds do not stop. You can spray chemicals on them. A lot of us humans do, use lots of chemicals to try to make the weeds stop. But they don't. You have to do the daily practice. But if you're a good gardener and you go along, it becomes very easy. You've done the hard work, right? And then you're just cultivating and cultivating. There's a momentum which occurs. It's true. An actual momentum. It feels very hard at first, and then you begin going downhill, and it starts to feel actually easier than it did previously. It's the same with the gardening process. This is a threefold manifestation in my experience and belief. We have the beautiful light, Christ light, shining, the one divine presence of all creativity, shining directly through our individualized filters, which are personifying in a mental and physical experience, which are connected as one. The physical manifestations of these lessons is a very valid place to learn them, in order that we can begin cultivating an internal mental experience, which then transfers to an internal spiritual experience, which then transfers to freedom from some of the bull crap that we deal with on a daily basis. It starts wherever we meet it. It's really hard to be simple, especially with cell phones and movies and airplanes. But there's freedom there. It's not renunciation. It's non-addiction. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate being able to talk to you about this subject, and I hope some of you have some questions. So if you do, raise some hands, and we'll make sure to get you a microphone. But thank you. You're welcome.